Good evening. Welcome to the City Council. Dang it. Good evening. Welcome to the City Council special meeting this Monday evening, June 16th. I now call this meeting to order. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Certainly, Mayor Newsom, Councilmember Diaz-Nash,
Here.
Councilmember Spirko-Goditsky,
Here.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lorraine,
Here.
and Mayor Newsom.
Here. We're excited to be here in person with options for those who choose not to be in person to participate virtually. There are several ways to participate. For those attending in person, complete a yellow request to speak slip and hand it to the city clerk. If participating remotely, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you will be called on at the appropriate time. If calling via phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for each specific item. We will begin tonight's special session with a closed session, Item 1, Conference with Legal Counsel, Existing Litigation. Before I convene the closed session, City Clerk, are there any requests to speak on these items?
Mayor Newsom, there are no requests to speak on this item in chamber or in our virtual environment.
Okay, then we will convene to closed session in conference room C and return after. Thank you. Welcome back. We will now move on to study session item 1, prohibiting lodging in vehicles ordinance enforcement. We'll have a presentation from Zachary Rada, Senior Management Analyst.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor. Sorry.
Mic check, one, two.
Test, test. Oh, there is.
Mic check 1, 2. Okay, I think we're good. All right, Marty, thank you.
And
Okay.
we're back. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Zach Rada, Senior Management Analyst in the City Manager's Office, and I'm here to speak to you about enforcement options available regarding individuals lodging in vehicles. So these are the enforcement options staff identified. Option 1 is to enforce Municipal Code Section 10.04.140 by directing the police department to conduct outreach at least twice prior to the issuance of a 24-hour warning, after which issuing citations or other appropriate enforcement action could occur. Option 2 is to enforce Municipal Code Section 10.04.140 without conducting the outreach described in Option 1. And Option 3 is to continue what we are currently doing. Section 10.04.140 of the Municipal Code, entitled Prohibiting Vehicle Use for Habitation and Sleep, was adopted in 1995 and updated in 2016. And it states that it is unlawful for any person to use a vehicle for lodging in the city of San Mateo. Over the years, enforcement of 10.04.140 has changed based on council direction, and currently the police department is providing resource options to people lodging in vehicles and not giving out citations. Staff is bringing this item back for council consideration this evening because this is a fiscal year 2025-26 blue sky priority item. And at the May 5th City Council meeting, the San Mateo City Council generally expressed a desire to explore increased enforcement and have a study session on this topic sooner. In the larger Bay Area cities, more stringent enforcement approaches are being planned or implemented, which can cause displacement and more vehicles used for habitation moving to cities like San Mateo. For example, San Francisco's proposed plan includes specialized outreach for people living in large vehicles, offers of interim or permanent housing, a vehicle buyback program, and a vehicle permit program for those awaiting placement into housing. After these steps are taken, 2-hour parking restrictions for large vehicles will be enforced citywide, and vehicles will be subject to citation and potential towing. The City of San Jose has adopted a pilot program on this topic that is currently identifying areas impacted by the parking of lived-in vehicles on city streets, establishing temporary tow-away zones to allow cleanup of impacted areas and encourage vehicles to relocate. And in some of these areas, they're considering permanent parking restrictions. In San Mateo, the city's homeless outreach team, or HOT, has conducted extensive outreach with the RV and vehicle dwelling community. The HOT is comprised of law enforcement, mental health experts, housing facilitators, and substance abuse counselors, whose primary focus is to intervene and either prevent at-risk situations or improve the circumstances of people who find themselves homeless in our city. In 2024, HOT hosted well-attended outreach meetings regarding complaints received, and the group began complying more with Public Works and PD requests. In addition to outreach meetings, HOT maintains regular contact, offering supportive services, shelter options, and housing resources, and most recently passed out 51 flyers in English and Spanish that had information about this agenda item and how to get in touch. Lastly, HOT has conducted weekly counts of RV and vehicle dwellers in our city, and the average is about 50 per week. So here are the options for City Council consideration. In option 1, the police department would attempt contact twice prior to the issuance of a 24-hour warning, after which enforcement in the form of a citation or other appropriate enforcement actions could occur. In this scenario, the city's priority would be to provide a service-oriented approach that emphasizes helping individuals receive services with a goal of permanent housing. and a vehicle owner would be notified of needing to have their vehicle moved at 3 separate touch points over a span of approximately 7 days before enforcement action is taken. Option 1 is the compassionate approach, and the intention is to get vehicle dwellers the resources they need and to get voluntary compliance. If option 2 is selected, the city would strictly enforce section 1004-140 without outreach or engagement. This scenario could potentially result in more unhoused individuals and families in need of resources and support throughout the city. It also could make it more difficult for individuals and families to obtain services, permanent housing, and transition into a more stable living situation. And option 3 is to maintain the status quo. In this scenario, the homeless outreach team would continue to meet with vehicle dwellers and attempt to improve their circumstances by providing resource options. Lastly, if option 1 or 2 is chosen, the police department would implement a 2-week grace period prior to implementing enforcement to allow for public notification and information of the city's planned enforcement approach. This would include canvassing the city and providing informational flyers to people who are currently dwelling in their vehicles, and we will ensure informational materials will be provided in multiple languages. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Before we go on to report or questions from the council and comments from the council, we'll open it up to public comment. Is there a public comment?
Yes, Mayor Newsom. If you wish to speak on this item and you have not already provided with me with a request to speak slip, please do so now. We will be closing the request to speak period after just a few moments. If you're participating in our virtual environment, please raise your hand now and you will be called upon in the order that requests to speak are received. Mayor Newsom, I have 2 requests to speak in chambers and 1 in our virtual environment. So that'll be 3 minutes per speaker. We'll begin with our in-person speakers. So I will invite up Lori Watanuki, followed by Julia Bonfiglio and Sebastian Bonfiglio.
Mayor Newsom and members of the City Council, this ordinance has been in effect since 1995, and it's time to begin enforcement again to reduce the impacts of health, safety, litter, and garbage overflow, loud noise issues, and the illegal parking of these oversized vehicles. I support option 1, which is resume enforcement of the ordinance with outreach by the police twice prior to the issuance of a 24-hour warning, after which appropriate outreach could occur. I hope this ordinance is enacted soon to address the visual blight and to be better prepared when other cities start strengthening their ordinances. There may be even more RVs redirecting to San Mateo. It's time to begin enforcement. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next 2 speakers will be Julia Bonfiglio and Sebastian Bonfiglio.
Hi, Council. My name is
Could you
Sebastian
please speak into
Bonfiglio. Hi, my name is Sebastian Bonfiglio, and this is Julia Bonfiglio. We've been living in Sunny Bay for the past 33 years. We live right around the corner where this is happening. I was the one that actually wrote an email to Glenn as well, and the reason why the article made it to the San Mateo Times, or whatever it's called, the newspaper. Anyways, I just want to make sure that you guys are listening to what the first person just said, that Article 1, and we want to start amending also the what San Jose is doing and what San Francisco is doing, right? And they have, and you guys should give them help, right, to get someplace, but we have to have some kind of deadlines here. And I think Article 1 is the one that we should need to adopt in San Mateo.
I think our main concern is like what she said, we see all the RVs parked there, and at first it was 1, then it was 2. Now that whole street where it says no parking is filled, and we're starting to see things pile up, and it's making me wonder where the waste is going, where the garbage is going, and it's a health concern. And we also, like I said, I do believe that some people just need help. And it would be great, option one, if there is outreach that can help these people find a permanent place and help them get back up on their feet if they need it. But we do want to just address it for the neighborhood as well and the safety of everyone.
Yeah, if
So-
you could give the police officer the tools to do this job, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving to our virtual environment, where our first speaker will be David Light and our final speaker will be Jeremy Levine. David, please go ahead and unmute your mic.
Hi, my name's David Light. I live on South Fremont Street. I first noticed some RVs on Amplet about a year ago. I don't know if they could have been there longer, but there were only about 2 or 3. And then more recently, when I went by, there's 7 or more. So, you know, they're just increasing the number of RVs. And I've also seen them around the post office on Delaware. I would support option 1. I mean, it's kind of a limited set of options, actually, you know, but it is the most compassionate. I know San Francisco puts up porta potties with washing stations and things like that. I mean, so you could try to find a parking lot or something like that, but then you'd have to manage that. So I just think really the option for San Mateo would be option 1, unless you wanted to try to find a place for these guys to park in a parking lot and then set up some kind of porta potties and things like that, which I just don't think that's practical. Anyway, that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker will be Jeremy Levine. Jeremy, please unmute your mic.
Good evening, council members, and thank you, staff, for that presentation. The options before the council right now are short-term solutions to people who do not have stable housing. And I understand that the council has an ordinance on the books and needs to find solutions that work for the full community. While pursuing those options, the council could consider two steps that the police department could take that might help fulfill a longer term solution. The first of those would be communicating with other cities. I know at least Menlo Park, Redwood City, Palo Alto, probably many more in the area are looking at regulating RV encampments more strictly. And as part of that, are looking into my second recommendation, which is a safe parking program. As the prior commenter noted, there are programs in the Bay Area where parking lots are designated for people to park their RVs medium term. The city of Pacifica has such a program, and there may be locations in the city that could be a model. People sleeping in their RVs is not an ideal long-term solution for housing. Housing is the only long-term solution to housing, but at least right now, as San Mateo processes the many applications for housing that it has received, it could look for something a little more stable than just banning the parking where it is now. Thank you for your consideration and work on this topic.
Thank you. Mayor Newsom, that concludes public comment.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and open it up for council comment. Who wants to go first? Daniel, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for the presentation. So while I think enforcement is important and appropriate in some cases, I do want us to take a measured approach. So I'm aligned with option 1. I like the idea of starting with engagement with our HOT team, followed by offering access to community resources. I think that's smart and balanced. I did want to, I know that we talked about a 2-week grace period. So I did want to see, I think if we suddenly change our policy, there should be more notice, just to give people a chance to really explore their options. To me, that's much more compassionate. So I was thinking initially closer to 45 to 60 days of a notice period, before we jump into, issuing warnings and fining people, because, there's a reason people are living in their RVs, and, giving out fines and things like this is costly. And, we want to make sure that they're really, we're making their lives better. and putting them in a safer environment. So those are my comments, and I'm supportive of option one and would love to have the council consider a 45 to 60-day notice period.
To go next. Lisa. Councilmember Diaz-Nesh.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you to all the police who've been involved in this, and especially to the HOT team who live this every day. And I think the success the HOT team has had demonstrates that outreach and compassion can work. And that I see this effort, and I also am supportive of option number one, as really expanding it and trying to bring even more wraparound services to the opportunity. I actually agree with Councilwoman Schwicker-Kaditsky. I think 45 days would be a good place to go. I think we also, and I'm sure the police already are planning along with city staff for the impact that changes in San Francisco and San Jose and Oakland policies have on the city. But I think there has to be a real emphasis on we're here to help, and here are housing opportunities. And the fact that that's been happening so far and that the RV number has gone down so much, I think shows that that approach can be successful. So I want to commend the folks who've been involved in that. And those are my comments. So option number one, but 45 days.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through the mayor. Thank you, Mr. Ruda, for your presentation. And I did have some questions about, sort of how we feel this will go, and what enforcement might look like. And I'll just hope that the appropriate person could weigh in as necessary. Firstly, I think we've received some emails from the public who are concerned about this, cracking down on forms of incidental nights spent in a car for various reasons that may not be related to the brunt of what we're talking about here. I get the sense that if we were to go with especially option one, given that we're conducting outreach with multiple touch points over time, this wouldn't have a large impact, it seems to me, to somebody who happened to, end up pulling over and sleeping overnight, and like in an incidental, not ideal situation. Does that sound right to you? Could you clarify what would happen to someone like that?
That's correct. With the two instances of outreach happening before the issuance of a 24-hour warning in option one, that would be the case. So if someone were just stopping by for one night, it would likely result in outreach, but not likely end up with anything more than that.
Okay, thank you. Can we talk a little bit about, so if we, let's say, given that council members have already given some support to option one, I also am interested in option one. So I'll use that as sort of an example. If we were to go with option one, and we found some folks in vehicles in our city who receive the information, get multiple touch points from police, and don't vacate and continue to practice things that are outside of code. If they're issued a citation, but they can't afford to pay it, what in your experience and staff's experience, sort of impact does a citation have on somebody who's in this sort of situation?
We'll have our police chief come up and take that question.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Yeah, the issuance of a citation for immunity code violation can be prosecuted in one of two ways, as an infraction or as a misdemeanor. An infraction, as you mentioned, is a fine only. It's similar to running through a stop sign. And it's handled at the same level as a traffic violation would be handled. A misdemeanor is actually a criminal offense and could ultimately result in a jury trial. However, that would be very, very rare. If whether it's an infraction or a misdemeanor and the person being cited doesn't take care of that, there could be consequences to that, right? Over time, that could grow into which would be a warrant and result in some type of criminal act, same as if it was any other type of misdemeanor or infraction. If that makes any sense.
Yes, I think that's helpful. Thank you. And has the city of San Mateo considered some of what we heard in public comment before at any point related to, well, I guess I sort of have a question about like what we might be considering and maybe, but maybe I'm going to backtrack and just ask first, if we have folks who receive the information, but, perhaps aren't ready to apply for some of the housing services that might exist within the county and need to vacate the area. I guess I'm curious, like, what options are available to these people? Where might they go if they were to apply for some of the services in that's provided in the information? Where might those services be, and how are those received and used?
Hi, I'm back. So yeah, I'm going to ask our hot team to step up and address what those services actually look like. I just want to be kind of clear to kind of bring how we envision this to practically occur if you do opt for option one. Is we understand the 2 touch points and those are important. However, in reality, there's usually one of 2 ways that somebody's not connected with services. One is they're just are not receptive to services, right? They don't want to go along with, and they're just not interested in receiving those services. Those are the individuals that pose a little bit of a challenge, and that's probably why we're here this evening. There's also a challenge matching or fitting people with services. It can be a very complicated process. The services we are fortunate to live in an area where we do have robust services, and we have a lot of avenues to provide folks with a pathway to housing, but sometimes that takes time. And so while the suggestion or the recommendation is 2 outreach points, in reality, that could be an ongoing process or relationship with the hot team while we're working to get these individuals into housing. So I just want to manage expectations that even if we do come out and we go through the process and we cite individuals, it doesn't mean that this problem is going to disappear overnight. We don't have the authority to simply tow their cars based on this citation. There are other issues. So it is it's a little bit more involved than what it may read in each of the 3 options, because it's more of a fluid ongoing process. But as far as what those services look like and how that works, I'm going to let the experts address that. That's our hot team.
Thank you. Some of the services that are available to the RV community is similar to people homeless on the streets, and that's going to be the shelter services going through what's called the CES process to get them onto housing lists, housing pool lists. If they're eligible, there's a lot of income requirements. There's sometimes residency requirements, and then we have the issue that a lot of the people living in the RVs are very reluctant to give up that private space to go to a congregate shelter. So what happens is we get them on a list, and it's determinant on their vulnerability score, and then we wait for the options. We help them through Section 8 housing, but again, there's federal requirements that are sometimes in contradiction to the eligibility requirements. So like the chief said, it's really complicated, and their interests, like really about half the RVs that we approach and outreach to, we don't even hear back from. And the other ones we're working with, it's just a very complex situation on whether they're eligible, whether they're interested. But one thing we found universally is that when it comes to a shelter opportunity, which is typically your first step for a homeless individual, they're not interested in giving up their RV space to go to that congregate shelter.
Thank you. And I guess I'd like to ask a little bit about this other idea of safe parking programs, because I feel like in what you just mentioned, it seems as though there are some people who might be amenable to considering some of what is on offer, and there might be others who, for whom it may take some time to discuss and work into considering it, or and there may, we talked about multiple touch points. I guess I'm concerned that if they're put on a wait list, for example, but that wait list is longer than a number of weeks, which of course it can be, if at that point they have continued to remain sort of on our streets, and are being, if we were to enforce, we would effectively be asking them to leave. It might be difficult to maintain contact with the services we're hoping to connect them with at some longer term. And so for those people, is there somewhere else in the county? I heard of Pacifica or other safe parking. Is that where they might end up? And have you seen some success? And is there a way to maybe keep connection with those folks?
The one safe parking situation that I'm most familiar with would be the Redwood City model that occurred, I guess it was a few years ago. We actually did a visit to that location. Again, it was a complicated situation. They had certain requirements on the qualifications of who can enter. It had to be RVs that were self-contained, that didn't have problems with leaking and non-operational mechanical issues with the RV. We were told that there was a lot of service calls from public safety, from public first responders, police, fire to the location there. And then there was also strict requirements about residency concerns from Redwood City about having people from outside of Redwood City coming into their facility. So, which also can be challenging to try to prove with someone who's homeless. Where have they been? They might bounce around from city to city. Do we know they're from Redwood City? So these are some of the concerns that came up with the Redwood City one. I'm not as familiar with the Pacifica one, but I know those are the kind of the general concerns that they had with that concept.
So I'll just quickly jump in here. I'm very well versed with the Redwood City model as I worked to establish that safe parking site during my time in Redwood City. First and foremost, in order to get into the safe parking site, you have to be willing to get into the coordinated entry system, just like what our HOT team said. You have to be willing to receive the services from the County of San Mateo to work your way into permanent housing, specifically. Here, the chief had mentioned earlier before the HOT team spoke, is that even individuals who are experiencing homelessness and living in the RVs themselves, we're going to allow them to stay where they're at as long as they're willing to get into the county program and work with our HOT team till that time. So essentially what we're doing is we're not establishing an off-street safe parking program. We're actually providing the services directly to their existing doorstep, but they have to be willing to get, to sign up for these services. So that's kind of, we're not going to enforce, right, Chief, unless they don't want to actually apply into the coordinated entry system with the county. That's my understanding.
Yes, of course, I serve at the pleasure of you all, but from a practical perspective, our vision is those folks who are agreeable or amenable to services are not folks that we're going to cite. If the HOT team is working with them to find them housing, it would be silly for us to take any type of enforcement action. I think the problem that we're running into, and I think the reason we're here tonight, is there's just a large percentage of folks that find themselves in this situation that don't even want to have the conversation and are not interested in or not receptive to those types of services. And that's the challenge that our HOT team faces. And hopefully this will provide some type of incentive to listen and to be more receptive to those services. But the folks that we're talking about this evening, as far as the time period from when we can actually connect them with the housing that they need, are not the individuals that are posing the problem today. Am I wrong?
Thank you very much. Okay, I appreciate this discussion and answers from our diverse and expert staff. So I'll move on to comments and just say that this is, a tough item for me because I think, as Councilmember Svirko-Goditsky mentioned, a number of people are, this is not necessarily a situation in which people want to find themselves. It's very, very expensive to live here. There was a comment about, short-term solutions, long-term solutions. Thankfully, I know that this city, through the general plan and our housing element and other programs, including the HOT, are interested in long-term solutions to help more people find affordable housing and can live and work here. But those are indeed long-term processes, and in the meantime, it's challenging. We may see things like HUD vouchers get cut at this time, and so I'm heartened to hear from the conversation that this is a continuation of the compassion that our department has shown to people who are in a tough situation now, and that the main idea is to contend with, I think, some forces that are outside our control, and ensure that we can continue to maintain safe streets and more. So for that reason, I am in support of option one, but I would like to see us get some kind of a report perhaps after a year's time and just make sure that we keep track of how things are going and whether there might be opportunities for us to do more or something different. I appreciate the Councilmember Svirko-Goditsky's request for a larger grace period. I probably should have asked whether that was, I think I don't see an issue with it. It sounds like something I can support. And I think that's all. Thank you.
This is actually my blue sky item. So I estimate that probably 2/3 of these people actually live not only in my district, but in my neighborhood of Sunnybrae. So I appreciate my Sunnybrae and central neighborhood neighbors talking about this. I've talked about this a lot with the city manager, and this is something, we've gone back and forth on, which is ultimately I want to make sure that it's compassionate first. If people are willing to go into a program, then that, as has been said, is what we're trying to get. We're trying to get people off the streets and into homes and shelter. But there's also a good many of them that are just unwilling to engage. And so for that reason, that's how we got to where we are. And I support the idea of a 45-day grace period, and even going beyond that for people who are engaged. But for people who don't engage at 45 days, I'd want to make sure that we were not in, our first warning, but that we were in our final warning at 45 days. But I think that tracks with what's being talked about. City manager and I also talked a lot about Redwood City's program. That model has been a struggle for Redwood City from a financial perspective. I think that we should continue to have conversations, not necessarily just with the city, but with the county, to see if the county could actually stand up some long-term options for people who live in RVs. And that could maybe be them taking over Redwood City site. It could maybe be them taking another site. But I think that ultimately, as a city, we can't unfortunately shoulder that financial burden right now, but that there's an opportunity for the county to do so and us to support them. The other thought that we had, which Alex is looking into, is the concept of having a pump out station near our wastewater treatment plant and being able to give vouchers to people who are homeless to be able to go and pump out for free at that station. That would also be a potential revenue generation because there's not a lot of pump out stations on the Central Peninsula, which also goes back to a concern, which is people who are living in RVs right now. I have neighbors who've sent me video. They're pumping sometimes into the bay, and so we want to make sure that from a health perspective that's not happening, because if you pump into the bay, it's going into our lagoon, and then our kids right now are swimming in the lagoon. That's not a great visual. Anyhow, the point is, we're going to look at that too as a future item. I am in support of option one with, like I said, a 45-day grace period for those unwilling to participate to go through have their final notice on their 45th day. I don't have anything else to add. Anything else?
So I have the general consensus and direction from the majority. I see all nodding heads to go ahead and move forward with option one with a 45-day grace period before we start any type of enforcement. We'll go ahead and do an information educational outreach element before we start any type of enforcement out there in both English and Spanish. And then we'll come back, and I heard at least Councilmember Lorraine wanted an update at a year's time. We can do a written update if that's okay.
That
See
would be
nodding
great.
heads for that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. And probably maybe even sooner than then we can give you guys an update.
Maybe we do like a 6-month and then a year.
Okay. I have the direct,
Can we also explore what Rob just mentioned?
pump out.
The pump out?
That's something I'm looking into currently.
Great.
And a ongoing conversation with the county to see if they'll stand up a program.
Okay. I can
That's
go
it.
ahead and relay that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the direction.
Right. Thank you for your presentation. This concludes our special session early, 30